All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of Diary of a Sales Engineer. I'm Ryan Kruger, and
I'm Samir Kosser.
today we're going to figure out the title of our episode in the episode. But before we do so, we have an amazing guest on us with today. So I'm going to kick it over to Samir for the introduction.
Today we have Aidan. He is a marketer specializing in viral organic social media content. In the last 2 years, his memes, skits, and videos have been viewed over 4 million times. He has made content for publicly traded companies, sports teams, and even a B2B mozzarella stick company. He's currently the founder of No Boring Brands, a company that's designed to make humor-based content for B2B brands, achieving over 125 million plus views. Some of those brands include Palo Alto Network, SEMrush, and Gillette. So Aidan, we're just super excited to have you here, especially as, Ryan and I are learning how to make content. And I, pass it off to you to give a brief intro, add anything I might have missed.
Yeah, I got to clarify, 100 million, 400 million organic views the last 2 years. But yeah, I'm really stoked to chat. And just my best friend is a cybersecurity sales engineer. So I hear his job every day. He tells me, his numbers, competing with everyone else that does his job. So I have a little sneak peek into what you guys do. And I know we're going to be talking about content, but I'm sure I'm going to have questions for both of y'all because I'm trying to work on my sales side of things too.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, I figured today, because you're an expert in content and marketing, it would make the most sense for us to actually figure out the title as we go throughout the episode. I found that for Samir and I, like our most impactful titles that we've had during the time we've do this podcast are the ones that we've just sort of like been on. We're like, that's it. That's the title for today. So as we're going through, I challenge both of you to keep your eyes and ears peeled for the title of today's episode.
I got you.
Awesome. So actually, I'm curious of, I kind of looked at your LinkedIn history and I've been following your content for some time. How did you get into, we'll call it the meme industry?
Yeah, it was kind of like, I hesitate saying like COVID was a blessing for me, but like it was a little bit my career wise. Like I was a freshman in college when COVID hit. And so everything went online and all of my sophomore year was online and school was like insanely easy. It was taking up like no time. And so I was in an apartment complex with three of my best friends. We're all roommates. And I was like, I love them so much, but like I couldn't play FIFA for 16 hours a day. Like I had to do something else. So I started applying to startups and I was using this app called like Pangea. I don't even know if it still exists. And I saw this one company, it was called Impact Snacks. And they were like, roast us with 10 memes or roast the big snack industry with 10 memes. Instead of doing that, I made 10 memes roasting their company. And like within 15 minutes, the CEO, he like messaged me. He's like, let's go on a call. That day we got on a call and I started working with them. And it was a superfood protein bar. So it was like vegan. The wrapper was edible. It was like this super eclectic and niche product. And I was there for 8 months, but basically it was my first foray into like meme culture. Like I knew I was like quick on my feet and like witty, but I'd never applied that to like an actual job. Like up until that point, I was just working at like Rita's and stuff like that, like a typical high school or college job. And so that was my first step into that. And I was running their socials way smaller scale than what I'm used to now, but still a decently sized scale. I think we had like 50K followers and was just posting memes. And that kind of snowballed into a few other jobs at media companies and working in marketing. We can talk about that too. And then like all came full circle. I kind of figured out what I liked doing and what I hated, and then picked what I liked doing and just doubled down on it. And that's what's gotten me to this point today.
So you said you were going to need a little bit of help with sales. I got to tell you, you actually used a sales tactic when you got this job called reversing. So what made you reverse it on them to say, I'm actually going to roast you guys?
I think like initially it was because I made 3 memes and I roasted them in the memes. And then I realized they were asking for me to roast the industry. And I didn't realize it until after I made 3 memes already. And I'm like, you know what, screw it. I don't feel like restarting. So I'm just going to make 7 more roasting them. So it was like by accident, but then I noticed halfway and I'm like, I'm still going full tilt.
That's awesome. I'm curious, what's, we all kind of have our own method of like generating these memes and making them. Like what's your what's your thought process as you're going and like creating all these memes for various different industries and various different, clients you work with today?
Yeah, so it's the same as when you're probably going into any sales call. Like you're just trying to ask questions and get to know who you're talking with, so that once you have this information, like information is power, you can pull on the right pain points to get them to be like, oh, I need that. So I really start with the questions and like being and like honing in on the ICP that I'm targeting. And so the way I do that is I'll go in like Reddit forums and communities of these ICPs. So like, let's just say blanket statement, like sales, right? So let's say we're trying to target like sales dudes or like SDRs who are 25 and male. I'm going to go to Reddit. Maybe there's an r/sales forum, and I'll sort by top and the hottest topics and whatever the most upvoted topics are, because I know that's what the vast majority of this ICP cares about. And if I apply that to social media, there's a higher percent chance that it's going to go viral and reach more people. And so and it all comes back to those pain points. And if you look at these forums, most of them are like complaints. It's like, oh, my manager's breathing down my neck. We just finished the year. I just hit quota, and now I have a restart it all again. Like that rush of feelings. And so like that's the fundamentals of all of the content I make, but the memes too. Like memes, the best memes just pull on pain points and are just relatable as crap. So like that's a little bit of my process when I'm making this content.
All right, I'm writing that one down. I'm using it. I'll tell you, like, as Samir got me into this meme culture, I just start off with just things I find to be like funny in my day-to-day world. It's like, all right, this bothered me today, or every time this happens, like I'm always focused on it. But I like the idea of actually going and trying to figure out what is the top 10 things that are actually driving people insane that they want to talk about, and watching the natural traction happen. Because look, if it's a pain point for majority of people on Reddit, it's gonna be the same people in Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. And those things are super applicable to every bit of the audience that you're talking about.
Yeah. And like, if you just think of humor, the funniest things are the truest of things, right? And the reason they're so funny is because everyone knows it's true, but everyone's afraid to say it out loud. So if you can start observing the things that happen to you in your day that maybe other people are like, they acknowledge, but won't tell other people, and you are the one that brings it out, people are like, oh my God, like, are you recording me? Like, how do you know that I feel the same way? And there's an immediate connection. Like, I love doing that with brands because it's very hard to build a one-to-one seeming connection between a consumer and a brand. So memes kind of like break that and enable brands to do that.
What brands do you think are doing this really well right now, where they're creating this sort of audience and doing these memes that are hyper targeted to the specific audience?
Yeah. So like the OGs are like Wendy's and McDonald's. No discredit to them, but anyone can make a meme about like getting fries at 1 a.m. Like we've all done it. But TSA on Instagram, I think, is like they're cooking with grease. They are on fire, right? Like it is a topic that you would think there's no way you can inject humor into the national security of the United States, but they exclusively speak through humor on their Instagram. They're a huge inspiration to me. And also they're an inspiration in other ways because most of the companies I work with are bigger, like a Palo Alto Networks, right? Like they don't want meme content that like everyone's using, right? Where like those trending memes, because they're mostly copyrighted content and their legal department hates that. TSA, all the content they create, or I shouldn't say all of it because I don't know 100%, but most of it looks like their own creative that they make. So that's an inspiration for me that I can bring to these bigger brands and be like, hey, there's no legal ramifications with this because we're going to build these memes internally and we don't have to rely on a Michael Scott meme or a Kevin James meme, stuff like that.
That's actually really interesting of building your own underlying photo. Can you like walk through the creative process of actually doing that? Like, because I'm always using just the templated stuff because that's as far as I've gotten. But how do you take that next step to generate your own templates essentially?
Yeah, one thing that's like super simple and easy, if you use this software called Tweet Gen, you can generate a tweet. Like it'll look like a tweet, but it's not an actual tweet. You can just come up with like, you can just add a picture of yourself, add a fake username, and just write whatever you want. People think memes is just always picture and text, but memes are super versatile, and like just text is a meme if it's formatted correctly. So that's one way you can do it. Also, I've been starting to play around with Canva. Has this feature called Magic Media where you can type in and be like, hey, give me a picture of a deer frolicking in the woods. And like it'll give it to you, and I'll use that. Like I made one about a month ago for a brand, and it sounds so simple and so stupid. It's 3 deer just jumping. And then in text that matched the colors of the aesthetic, I wrote, "Oh dear, I am anxious." Like that was it. Like it was just like you look at it and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I am anxious." Like it's like, the end of the year. Like so using AI, I use different softwares, but also like just having it's a muscle that I've worked out. So like I was working with ClickUp, and they're a project management software. And I was in my kitchen just cooking, and I saw I have a strainer, and I'm like, this would be kind of funny. So I put my strainer under my sink, and I start running the water, and I'm like, I put the text over. It's like, I'm gonna be nice to my coworkers when this fills up. Obviously, the strainer is never gonna fill up, and like it's funny, right? Like so it's part also just having the muscle and exercising it, but using these different tools too.
Are there any exercises that you use to get that muscle triggering on a day-to-day basis? I mean, like for me, coming from the world of basketball, right? It's getting in the gym every day. It's practicing your layups, the way you shoot, but you train your body to do those things. I'm assuming you have to do a similar process.
Yeah, my process is like being that I'm so connected to social media, I'm actually very like not online for someone who creates a bunch of content. So the way I get into a state of being able to think of these abstract concepts is deliberate time away from technology. So every morning I start my first 90 minutes of the day, no technology. I'll get up, go to the gym. I just start thinking and like gets the thought processing going, some blood to the brain and everything. And then if I'm going to create content, I literally set off time on my calendar, and I'll tell Siri to set a 90-minute timer or whatever. And in that 90 minutes, I'm just going to not do anything except make content so I can get in a flow state. That's like one way how I've accessed it really quickly. But getting in the gym every day and getting shots up, it's just I've been creating content for 5 years straight. And so like I have all these different ideas that I've seen in the past that I can take inspiration from. That also helps a lot.
I'm like just digesting all of this because it's awesome to hear. I mean, I'm curious because I know you also create like video, and your recent post was talking about long form, getting there. How does the same strategy like transition to something like video versus a still text and image?
Yeah, it really depends on the platforms you're posting on. Most platforms have kind of just been following TikTok. And it's like, let's just add a TikTok feature to our platform and not innovate anything on it. And
Yeah.
so almost every platform has a solid video feature now. So you can post video on every platform. But I would still say LinkedIn is still primarily like text and photo based platform. It's really shifting to video. I'd say maybe by the end of this year, it'd be like a 50-50 split. Instagram is like 70% video, 30% static. And so it really depends on the platforms. So with my clients, for every 10 posts that I'm posting on Instagram, 7 of them are probably video. LinkedIn, I've been doing a lot of video, and like Twitter, I don't touch video. It's very static based. So just simple answer, depends on the platform, but like you can just connect on a different level with video, and you can pick up on so many other cues that you wouldn't be able to just through text or just through an image. But those strategies still work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a huge advocate of just like text based. Like I think any content is better than no content.
I got a really pressing question here for you. This year, I've made it my goal. I'm going to do more video content on LinkedIn. The biggest challenge I face is just one, being scared to do it, putting my face and my voice out there on a consistent basis, thinking that people want to listen to that, right? So I think that's struggle one. And then two, every time I start thinking about it, I'm like, oh man, that's going to be a lot of work to put together a video, edit it up, get the captions on it, get it shipped out, ready for LinkedIn. Any advice to me as somebody looking to actually branch and do this more often in 2025?
Well, I'm glad that you're setting that out and putting that out there so everyone can hold you accountable that you're going to start making video. So I would say don't overthink it. Optimize for consistency, not virality or follower growth, optimize for your own consistency. So just think to yourself, what's a format with video that I know I can make consistently? I'm insane. So I would say consistently means posting every single day. For most people, that's not even possible. But Ryan, I feel like you might be able to do it. Or maybe just say, let's say 3 days a week. So just think, what formats can I consistently and enjoy creating at least 3 times a week so that I don't miss a Monday, Wednesday, Friday? And that might be a 15-second walking, do you have kids?
No, I do
Okay,
not.
maybe just walking around the neighborhood in the morning, right? Like a 15-second video would be like, hey, so like I got this objection in a sales call the other day. And like, here's how I worked with the SDR on how to solve this or whatever. Or it could be a 60-second sit down, in-depth, thought through thing, but whatever you can create consistently. So that's what I'd prioritize. And then I would just say, to the fear of like what other people might think, something that I've done, like I still struggle with that. I separate my personal and business. So I'm not an influencer. When people tell me I'm an influencer, I'm not an influencer. I'm just a business owner who recognizes the power of social media. So that's why I use it. And where I draw the line between influencer and just leveraging social media is when you bring your personal life online. So I don't really bring my personal life online. And that actually helps me with that fear of like what people are going to think of me. The little bit I do bring online are like things I'm not too worried about. Like I'm not talking about my mom and dad in depth, or like my relationship with my sisters, or like most of the stuff I weave in about my personal life is kind of fiction based. And I'm just weaving in these narratives that are kind of funny and I know other people can relate to. So that's what I would say. Maybe just keep your personal life personal and just talk about your personal experiences in business.
Okay. All right. I like that. It's a good piece of advice. So that way it's no longer, Ryan Kruger, the person creating content, is Ryan Kruger, the business person creating the content. Maybe that's why, pop singers, they all have stage names, is it allows
Yeah.
them to get by without thinking about their own personal brand associated to the quote unquote name that they're performing under. And so I kind of like that idea. Just like create that delineation in my head. Hey, it's Ryan Kruger, the business person, creating this content, putting these videos out. And whether people listen to them or not, this is the goal I've set forth. We're going to get the information out there. Now, one thing that I have noticed with myself as I've been creating content is this idea of recycled content. So, within sales engineering, there's a lot to talk about, but that gambit also ends at a certain point in time, especially if you're trying to post every single day without recycling old takes or old ideas. How do you navigate that with the different brands that you work with on just not posting the same kind of meme over and over again?
Yeah, I am a huge fan of recycled content. Like if you just after this call observe your favorite like maybe media companies that you follow online and see what they do, because media companies, their entire product is content, and at some point they're going to run out of new ideas. Like if you look at a Barstool Sports or like a Sports Center, sports is just on my mind, but they literally recycle content so often, and it's because we all see so much content every day. We have like our memory has been fried. So I repurpose content. Like I won't do it in the same week, but like if there's a concept I like and I'm like, I don't have an idea today. It's like I sometimes will literally copy and paste a past post that I, know was a well thought out post, and I'll bring it back to the forefront again. So I wouldn't fret about that. The typical timeline I abide by is like 2 to 3 months. Like bring that type of content back if you're going to do it like word for word or concept by concept. But like, yeah, it's you will run out of like net new like pillars of ideas, but you just have to find ways to like maybe connect the pillars and take a different approach with stuff. But Daniel Murray, who I mentioned to Samir, like he's a mentor to me, and one thing he's done, he's built 3 7-figure businesses. All of them are content-based businesses, and he just says, pick 3 things that you could go on stage and talk for 30 minutes about, and just weave them into every aspect and just keep them top of mind in everything you do. Just to reiterate, like, I'm Ryan. This is what I know. This is what I do. Boom, 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 and come hit people with that every day.
I like that. I like that a lot. So I guess, pivoting just a little bit with content for B2B, that's what you've been focused on with your current company. How have you seen that differ from other content that you've had to create, or is there a difference?
Yeah, the biggest reason for my delineation of like only servicing B2B versus B2C and D2C is a business decision. I've worked with D2C brands, I've worked with B2C brands, and I realized that I can build more of a moat for myself and my brand against the competition if I target B2B. The reason being, like a point I made earlier with McDonald's and Wendy's, like any 17-year-old could get online and make banger memes for McDonald's and Wendy's, and McDonald's and that would drive the price of that product or service down. And the only way you can compete is based on price. I don't want to compete on price. So I want to go to the Palo Alto networks of the world and be like, yo, you can't find a person on this planet who can make memes targeting your 57-year-old CEO who needs your cloud security product. And instead of competing on price, I'm competing on knowledge and the processes I've built to extract the information I know I need to make this content. So that's why I picked B2B. Also, I've worked with D2C brands. They're flashier. They're more fun to be like, yo, I'm working with Nike, or like I'm whatever. I'm working with Poppy. But month one, if the retainer is $1,000 and they don't see $1,000.01 back after month one, they're going to kick the can and be like, get out of here. Where B2B, it's like, $5,000 a month retainer, sure. 6-month contract, sure. It's just a business decision why I made that.
Okay. And I think it'd be interesting to hear from you the sales side of this, right? You have to go to these companies and organizations that are looking to do B2B memes and gain internet traction through the different content you make. What does a typical sales pitch look like for you? Are you making memes on the spot? Are you bringing a portfolio of memes with you? Walk us through what a day in the life looks like.
I'm going to be honest, my sales process needs a lot of work. That's like my goal for January. Like me and my ops guy are putting together some really sound processes for it. So up until this point, like I'd been running the business for a little over a year without marketing it at all because I had a full-time job and just, I didn't want to potentially risk anything. So every client I got was mainly like they'd book a call with me because they were curious about me, and then we get on a call and I'd subtly just say, oh, by the way, I do this with brands, I make memes, and they'd be like, all right, let's go. And so like they were already really warm and I didn't have to do much selling. And with this launch that I did December 12th, I had like 45 like qualified meetings booked, and they were all inbound. And so what I do on the call is like I'll just start asking them like what their team makeup is of like, do they have a social media person? Because some of these big brands don't have a direct social media person. They just have agencies they work with, and they have a director of social media who has nothing to do with the social media except managing agencies. So a lot of it's just asking questions, trying to get a picture of like who can be my internal champion and like how the process could work. And then just start on the call. I'll have their Instagram, LinkedIn, their feeds up to see how much content they're posting, and maybe just give some live feedback and be like, hey, this content, maybe try this next time. And like from that, I try to build a custom offer on the meeting of just like, I think this number of pieces of content, this type of content, it'll be this price. And I try and close them on that meeting, but most often people are like, oh, I'll touch base, whatever. I don't know if that's like clear enough, but that's like typically how the calls go.
Okay. Okay. On the sales piece, I'm actually really curious about the last thing you said here. Okay. You said sometimes you'll build the offer right then and there. How often are you converting a live offer?
It's weird. I would say before I launched, it was like 80% because people were my offer was, it was a very affordable offer. So when people saw it, they were like, oh, let's go. Now I would say it's definitely a smaller percentage. So I actually didn't close any on live offer building on my launch. So I had 40 meetings and I probably did a live offer building on like 4 of them. I didn't close any of them. The rest were like followed up and closed 4 of them. So and I would like to hear, I don't know how much following up you guys do, but like I'm kind of a maniac. I don't know if it's good or bad. I follow up so much until they either tell me, yo, F off, like this is so annoying, or fine, we'll work with you, or yes, we'll work with you. I don't know if that's like if you have any tips to that, if you guys even
Sure.
do that much.
Sure. I think, okay, you've been helping us out on the content creation side. I think this is where Samir and I can lend a helping hand on the, sales piece of this all. One, I think as you're going through these calls, focus on the value creation, right? Get to quantifiable metrics through discovery with them. How long does it take your team to build memes today? How many memes are you doing? How many people are you reaching in your audience? Here's the typical returns I see. Start working on building different ROI metrics that they're going to see by using you, right? So that way, when they sign a contract with you, they know the sort of value that you're going to be creating. Also, don't get me wrong. I think there can be value in having like a live quick offer. Hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what it is. I think people are more responsive to actually saying, let me actually take that, what I've heard from you today. I'm going to build you a custom offer. What I'd like from you, and what we typically see in my sales process, is the next step. I'm going to book a 30-minute meeting with you. We're going to walk through the ROI that I'm going to be providing you as the service of me creating this different content for you. And then we're going to get into the pricing. How does that sound for you? And can we book that 30-minute meeting? When are you available? Is that what you're not doing on the fly? Because most people just won't make a decision on the fly, right?
Yeah.
Like I always like to say, like there was one sales call I had in particular where a sales guy I was working with tried to force this mom and pop shop I was working with to make a decision on a Friday afternoon. He's like, you guys have a few hours to look at the discounted pricing that we have and make a decision. I'm like, dude, my parents can't decide what restaurant they're going to that quickly. You think they're going to buy tens of thousands of dollars of software that fast? It's never going to happen. So I like giving people time to actually digest the information that they have and then come to the conclusion that they want to work with you. I don't know, Samir, what else you got here?
Yeah, no, I think I definitely agree with all of that. Taking a moment to step back and build a contract on the side, even if that takes you like 2 minutes to make. They don't
Yeah.
need to know like how long it takes, but I think from like a B2B perspective, you're never giving on the fly offers. You're giving like maybe rough pricing. Like, oh, we've seen clients your size, it's about this much, but we'll give you a more formalized offering once I look at, you want to run across 3 socials, you want this many posts per week, video content versus static images content will be different types of pricing, all that information taken into account, and then have like a more formalized contract, so to speak. And then to that point, the next call is like, okay, here is the offering and here's why. Or you talk about the value first and then you bring in the price. So now they're getting all of this value and they have a number in their head, and you come in and most of the time they will then rationalize and be like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
He's providing 10 posts a week on all of our socials, and we've seen all of his other work. So definitely don't feel like you need to close in one call. I think
Okay.
B2B, like I've never been on a B2B sales call that closed in one call, let
Yeah.
alone like 1 month. Like, I mean, you can with the faster ones, you can get it in like 4 weeks, but that's just like kind of standard versus like a B2C or a D2C. Like you walk into a Nike shop, I walk out with shoes. There's not much selling to do, but from when you're selling to companies like Palo Alto Networks who are used to, their sales cycles are 6, 12, 18 months sometimes.
Yeah.
So I would like think of it from that perspective.
Okay. So it's balancing wanting to keep the momentum, but doing that through making sure you get a second meeting on the books. And in that second meeting, you go over like, hey, here's the offer I built you. Here's the price. First, here's the value. Then here's the price. Like that.
I'm a huge proponent of what we call a mutual success plan or a mutual action plan. So you show them a timeline. You say, here's where we're at today, or here's what we've done in the past, and here's where we're at today. Here's the next step in our process. We typically look to book this call next week. Are you available on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday? Give me a time. We'll book it. And then right after that, we send you over a contract, and then we see a contract get signed. So you actually hold them accountable to a timeline that you define, and you just let them know, this is my process. Here's what typically happens. When I do all of this different work with all different B2B customers, just like yourself, here's exactly what we do, and here's where I'm at, and here's where we're getting to. I think that builds a lot of confidence in just not only you, yourself as a seller, but it also builds a lot of confidence in you as the brand that you're selling to, right? Here is what I do. I've done this a lot of times, right?
Mm-hmm.
That gives confidence to the buyer. Say, you know what, this person actually really knows what they're doing. They know the product or service that they're selling. I'm now going to take this information back, and then I'll make a decision and move forward or not move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate like that is so much free game right there. Thank you. Because that's something like I've been, like So obviously I'm selling a service to B2B companies. So I'm not selling software, but these B2B companies obviously do move slower. And like, I just don't want to lose momentum. One, because part of my service, it's kind of hindered by the fact that it is very niche. I'm a creative humor agency. Like I need to stay top of mind because otherwise they have 80 other initiatives. And like, this is kind of just like one of those. So it's like a blessing and a curse because it has a high chance of them remembering who I am because it was such a niche call. But I do feel like I would say I feel a little weird when I do put an offer and price live on a call because it feels rushed. And then they might not have 100% faith that maybe that price is correct or that offer is right for them. But I had just been doing it out of fear of not losing momentum.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable in sales, right? Talking about price is difficult. Whether you're doing it with a prospect, a customer, a friend, a family member, all those things are kind of interesting. Imagine like you have a sofa in your house, right? And you're looking to sell the sofa, but you want to get some money for the sofa. You have some friends that are interested, family, and you're like, well, they're my friends and family. Should I give them a less price than somebody I don't know? And that gets awkward too, right? So it's the same thing, right? So when we're talking about price, I think as a salesperson, there's always this, maybe I am uncomfortable to give price. Get really comfortable giving out pricing and metrics. Know the sort of pricing that you offer. Like Samir said, hey, based on what we're talking about today, the typical range that I see for this service that I give is right around here for static images, here for video content and generation. But what I'm going to do after this call, I'm actually going to take the numbers that we had. I'm going to actually build out an ROI for you. And then on the next call, we'll go through what that contract looks like. Again, that's just like good standard practice. And if you do that confidently, they'll buy into that right away and say, yep, that sounds great to me. And then one thing I am going to point out here, just because I started this book earlier last week, it's called The Jolt Effect, and it's all around buyer indecisiveness. So we always think in sales that it's breaking the status quo, but actually it turns out, and I'm only a chapter through, so don't quote me on any of this yet. I haven't made it through the book, but it's talking about how indecisive buyers can be, right? The fear of making a change that actually hurts them. Hey, I sunk some money into this and it didn't work out for us, reflects poorly on them. So I think that's interesting. Again, I'm one chapter in, so I don't have much more to share outside of that, but I do think it's important to throw out there too that sometimes the buyers you're working with just may be indecisive, right?
Yeah.
If they are indecisive, how do you overcome an objection?
I think I need like a sales masterclass. I need to just go like this is because I've just been relying on like my ability to talk to people on calls, but there's a different level to it.
And taking a step further of once contract signs, that's actually when the work begins, right? Being able to give them a roadmap of, okay, here's how long it would take. If we sign contracts today, by next week, we'll be able to start pumping out. Or, 3 weeks, we'll get our first post and it'll be starting going on this cadence. So now you're having them visualize what the future looks like with you. And now they can also say, hey, actually, we have a deadline January 1st because we're trying to revamp our marketing. And okay, it's January 6th today. So let's work backwards. If you guys want January 1st, it takes me a week to start compiling something and we need some time for contracts. So by next week, we need to come to a decision. And once you have that whole mapped out of this is call 1, call 2, we talk pricing value, call 3, we wrap things up, sign contracts. And then a week later, we're off into the races and giving them that whole
roadmap.
Everyone wants to follow a recipe. When you can follow a recipe, you can make the meal really easily versus like I'm like thinking about in my head, what do I have to do next? But if you tell me exactly where I'm going, that takes less work as a buyer. And now all I have to do is like, oh, is this a good idea or not? Do I want to work with this guy? It seems reasonable. Like, let's do it. Make it easy to buy, essentially.
And do you show that roadmap and timeline through like just by vocalizing it, or will you write that out in an email and a follow up, or like show it in an image like on a sales slide deck as you're on a call?
What feels natural to you?
I would say like almost in an email follow up of like, hey, here's where we are. Boom. Here's the next step. And then here's the future.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's always great to include some of that information within an email. But you have to remember, people get bogged down with a ton of emails that they don't want to read. So
Yeah.
I'm under the belief that like the longer an email gets, the less likely somebody is to actually read it. So
Yeah.
I think something that could be helpful for you is one, just vocalizing it. Say, hey, here's what my typical process looks like. By week 1, we've already done 3 static images, 2 videos. By week 2, we've already done 10 of each, right? And I'm building this portfolio out for you to share on a cadence that I define of what it looks like to you. I think that could be helpful. But I also think like a little slide to go with it and say, look, here's our roadmap or our journey together. Month one, here's how much we're going to create. Month two, here's how much we're going to create. And here's how much I think your audience is going to respond to it. Based on what I've done previously, here's the kind of expectations that we can see. We can see, impression growth from 100 to 300%. Typically, we're right in the middle there. But again, my goal is to make sure that we're on the high end of this. But I want to show you what, the typical numbers look like. And that's just a nice visual guide. You share that visual guide with them. So if they do want to reference back to it and they're thinking about you, they go, actually, let me just go click on that slide you sent me before. Oh yeah, that's right. By month two, we're going to be doing 10,000x impressions than where we're at today. Yeah, I'm buying into this, right? And so they start getting really confident with you again as the seller, but also where they envision themselves being. Like as a buyer, what I want to do is I want to buy something that puts me in this future state that's awesome. Like I don't want you to put me in a car that's going to break down. I want you to put me in the best car ever with the best engine that's never going to break down. You got to sell me on those things. You sell me on those things, I'm probably going to buy the car.
Okay, that's something I've been missing completely on every call is that future state. And instead, I mentally thought I was talking about that future state by talking about like case studies with past clients. But I need to like put it in like, hey, this is where your brand will be in month one, month two, and like showing that on a sales call. I haven't even done that. So
I think something cool too, like as a part of your case studies, put a little sizzle reel of like your top highlights that you made, right? Like, hey, here's customer X, here's the return they got, but have like image one, image two, image three, and like a super cool layout on a slide. So that way when they're looking at it, they're like, oh, wow, yeah, I get it. I like this meme that I'm seeing right now. I could see how we got to those metrics.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. That's like immediately implementing this.
Yeah. I mean, what Ryan just described is you're pretty much, I'm going to put this in quotes, like rigging the game in your favor. You're picking out metrics that you do really well on, and you're pulling the focus to them. As like SEs, we do this when we're demoing our product and we're showing different aspects of our product. We are focusing in on the things that we do really well and like forcing the conversation to stay in that area. So what Ryan just described is pretty much like what we do all the time. We're just shifting the angle to show our good side, essentially.
And look, if the bad side comes up, try to navigate or steer away from it, right? You only want people to photograph you from one side or the other. But that being said, sometimes they are going to want a photo of your bad side. Be prepared to talk about that and be comfortable to say some things that, you might be uncomfortable with. Again, the more confidence that you could speak to something and say, you know what, you're right. You're asking me about this situation or something that I can or cannot do. Let me talk to you about what happened, why it happened, and let me explain to you why it's not going to happen again. And again, like this is you just building confidence throughout the entire sales cycle. They start understanding you and having a belief in you and the relationship that you're building. It makes it easier for them to put their name down on a piece of paper and say, I believe in you and I'm willing to actually commit this amount of money to it.
Okay. Thank you. Like that's like this is great advice.
Yeah, I feel like we could keep going off on this topic for a long time, but I do want to be cognizant of your time. You've dropped a lot of knowledge bombs on us. It was the least we could do to repay you just a bit. But with like any closing words, any thoughts that you want to leave the audience before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I would say like for both of y'all, if you're really trying to make content, what I would do is like, and I'm gonna be honest, this is a controversial take. I would ignore what everyone else that is in your role or in crushing it in content. I would just ignore what everyone else is doing and just sit and think and like you said to me, Ryan, like what comes naturally to me, just think what comes naturally to you and make that content. I think differentiation is the single greatest factor when it comes to marketing. And so if you just start looking at what other people are doing and innovating upon the wheel, like you're still part of that wheel and like you won't stick out as much as if you just bring something net new. So I spend a lot of time, on YouTube and Twitter, and that's a big inspiration for my LinkedIn content. So I look outside of the platforms I'm on for inspiration.
Yeah, and I got to dig into this Reddit thread and starting to think about like how I'm going to generate content. and not having it feel super recycled. So I really appreciate the advice and experience you brought on today's call. Now, there is one last thing we have to do before we let you go, which is we have to determine what today's episode title is. So let's go around the horn here. I'll start with Samir. So I'll give you a moment to think. Samir, I need one title name for today's episode.
I mean, I feel like I learned a lot about, the process of content creation, and this might be a cop out, but it's like content creation 101. And it was also a lot of sales 101. So it was like a sales hyphen content creation 101. I'm gonna go with that one. Sales hyphen content.
Okay.
Sales
I'll go next because I wanna leave it with our expert on our final one. I have a title idea. You brought up Nike earlier, so I'm thinking about that. I'm gonna say just make content. Period. Right then and there. Right. We're talking about content marketing today. You gave me a lot of confidence to go out there and just do it. Just make it.
Just make it.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think I have two ideas. One from that sales side of things, because I feel like that was a massive lesson I learned, is just like highlighting your future state, like highlighting that future state. Like obviously that's probably a little more of a sales focused. And like, just the marketer in me, like another one could just be like how he got 400 million views, ...
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I like that a little bit better because I do think that will probably drive the most growth. So that's why we asked the expert. That's why I figured it'd be best to do it on today's call.
Let's go. Wait, one more thing. Yeah, numbers in any hook or on any text, that gets the eyes.
Okay, I'm going to use that in my next post.
Let's go.
Well, actually, I'll use it in my post about this podcast, right? I'll say how he got 400 million, and we'll see if that, spikes the growth here on the podcast. But we really appreciate having you on and sharing your experience here. It was great connecting.
Yeah, I appreciate you both for having me on, and we'll stay in touch. I'll probably hit your DMs again with some sales questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anytime.
All right. Well, I'll catch you boys.
Thank you so much.
Well. Peace.
Wow.
I'm inspired. I'm inspired to make some content. I said just make it. I am inspired to do it. It is Jan 6. I said I was going to make more video content. I have released 0 video content in 2025. I'm already a week behind. And I have an idea of what I want to do. But again, I let that fear and doubt creep into my head here on making content. But I really like what I heard today around just like separate yourself from the actual content, right? It's more like Ryan Kruger content creator, Ryan Kruger personal life, separate them out. And maybe that gives me some more confidence. I don't know, Samir, maybe one of these days on the podcast, I'll give you the opportunity to give me my stage name. So that way I can totally create like a new personality for myself to really chase
the online persona. Yeah. I mean, I think there was a lot of like golden nuggets there from like creating content and the process of thinking about it. How do you kind of unlock your creativity? I really like that. He mentioned just being offline to build stuff online has really helped. Like having those 90 minutes of almost letting your mind wander, so to speak. And yeah, it is a muscle that you create. I literally, when he was saying the like strainer example, stuff was like popping off in my mind. So spoiler alert, if you see something with the strainer from me, shout out to Aidan for the inspo. But no, I mean, I think it's really cool to see and like talk to someone who does this a lot and see how they think about the world and like they see the world. And I do really think that B2B sales dry, frankly. And if you can like inject humor and make it a little bit more fun, right? We've always talked about it. People buy from people. And who doesn't like to laugh? So like if you can,
that's what I was saying, like the sizzle reel would be so cool. Like if you were a customer buying this, right? Like, of course I want to see the sizzle reel of memes, like make me laugh, right? Like you're selling me on this stuff. Like you have a few memes in there that make me laugh, make me realize how relatable it is. I'm likely just to say like, of course, like I'll be able to do this with my business, no problem. And I think it's just so cool to see how many times sales relates to so many different aspects in life, right? Whether it's buying a home, buying a car, whether it's selling B2B, like having good sales skills really helps out. But I do think as we've shifted to this digital era and the rise of social media, this is like moving into the content era. The people that know how to navigate creating amazing content, there is such a great future there. And to the 17-year-olds out there, take some advice. Like, I don't know, go start making some funny McDonald's and Wendy's memes, right? Like just make it, we'll say.
Just make it. I love that. I also really like the fact, like what he touched on, and I think we both noticed this is like some of the memes that have gone viral for us are the ones that are like so obvious, but no one talks about it,
Hmm.
and they just pop off. And like that, when he said it, I was like, yeah, that's like exactly. I can like point to like three or four of the ones I've made. Some of the ones you've made have come to mind where people just resonate with it, and then it pops off because it's just a common problem, but like nobody talks about it. So that was another big takeaway is like just be willing to call out something that everyone knows is happening, but like everyone's too scared to say anything about.
I know, and for me too, I remember texting you once upon a time because I'd spent like all this time writing a post of mine. I spent like all this time. I'm thinking about. I'm like, this is such a great post. There's so much good information in here. And then I post and it has like the lowest amount of traction out of anything I'm doing. Whereas the post where I'm just like organically feeling and thinking about things, whether I'm at the gym or just like I have a spurt in a moment, I'm like, that was funny. Let's build something. Those are the ones that actually do the best versus the ones where I'm actually like sitting, forcing myself to make the content. So I do think there's just an organic nature of, yeah, give yourself time offline to make the content. Don't try to force it. I think if you force it, you end up in that situation of having unrelatable content sometimes. But if you allow yourself to just kind of get into that flow state, you'll end up with some really good content, some really good numbers.
Absolutely. Um, I mean, any closing thoughts we want to leave with the audience?
Any closing thoughts with the audience? Man, Diary of a Sales Engineer. How did they get 400 million views? Has a nice ring to it. That's the last thing.
All right. Well, till next time, we got a lot in store for this year. I mean, both Ryan and I are committing to producing more content, video form, long form stuff. So we're really excited to share with y'all. We got some things cooking. And until next time, this
Till
is
next time, y'all.
Samir signing off. And I guess we'll see what we end up naming this. I really like Just Make It. So I think that might be the one.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. See you, everyone.
And